everybody, my name is Karen Fabian and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I wanted to talk about a topic that is near and dear to yoga teachers, and that is the muscles at work in yoga poses. Now, this is just a YouTube video and that is a super big topic, so it's not as if I'm going to get to a ton of information about this topic. However, I want to give you an approach that you can use in your self-study, because I know for yoga teachers that are out there doing their own studying to learn anatomy, it can be a tall order. Matter of fact, many of the teachers that I end up having conversations with found me on YouTube. And they found me because maybe what you did, they typed into the search bar, "want to learn anatomy for yoga," or "how to learn anatomy for yoga," or "how to learn more about yoga anatomy." And I popped up and they just clicked me. So this idea of studying anatomy on your own often comes out of a need that yoga teachers have because the training they attended initially didn't meet their needs around learning anatomy. And how do they know this? Well, they know this because when they teach, they're not quite sure how to cue with anatomy in mind. They might feel like they've got a good handle on cueing action words like press and reach and squeeze and bend and that kind of thing. But when they try to cue with anatomy in mind, they're not quite sure what's happening. And there's usually other triggers as well that leads them to believe, I've got a learning gap around this topic of anatomy that I want to fill. So then they go out and they go to YouTube and they probably go to Amazon and they buy some books, and there they are with this information, and still they're not feeling like they're getting where they want to go. So what I'm going to offer you here is a way to focus your studies so that it can be a little more targeted to what is helpful for you to know as a teacher. And this is all around the first thing I mentioned, the subject of the muscles in the poses. So I want you to first think about muscles in poses. So let's first think about muscles themselves. So muscles act on joints to create movements of the limbs. So we're talking here about the musculoskeletal system. When we're talking about the movements of the limbs, we're talking about anatomical actions that are referred to from the joint and result in movement of the limbs. Mainly the arms and legs, could be the spine, could be the head. Let's just kind of hone in on the arms and legs for right now. So who is creating that movement? Well, if we look at the muscles acting on the joint, creating the movement of the limb, that allows us to identify muscles as the prime movers to create joint action that results in movement of the limb. If we further hone in, we can look specifically at muscles that create the action versus muscles that resist the action. And there's even some further digging we can do. But what I'm going to do right here is just stop for now because I don't want to overwhelm you, and I'm going to hone in on what I just said, muscles that create the action. These are muscles known as concentric actors, prime movers, muscles that are concentrically contracting. And this is what I'm going to suggest you focus your studies on. Because when we look at the broad topic of understanding muscles at work in poses, the magic is right there in that statement, at work. I'm not saying let's look at muscles that are stretching in poses. I'm not saying let's look at muscles that are stabilizing joints in poses. I'm saying let's look at muscles at work in poses. So this gives us the clue as to what our studying should be focusing on, which is understanding in a pose what muscles are creating the action in that pose. So obviously, every yoga pose has a number of different joint actions. So a number of different muscles that are concentric actors. So for this video here, what I'm going to focus on are 3 different postures and tie them all together because the same 2 muscles are acting concentrically in each of these different poses. And the reason I'm picking this approach is because I want you to see how the same muscles can work in different shapes, which you probably already thought about, but I'm going to give you an example. And I also want you to learn these two muscles if you don't already. So this is a really good way to start to teach you about how these muscles work. So the two muscles I'm going to focus on are muscles of the rotator cuff, so they act on the shoulder joint. They act to externally rotate the shoulder. So if they're external rotators, they're on the back of the body for the most part, and they connect the scapula to the humerus. If they're going to externally rotate the shoulder, they've got to connect somewhere on the arm bone, because this is external rotation, and to do it I need to do something with this arm bone. I need to roll it a little bit. So whoever is doing that, whatever muscle's doing that, you can bet they're going to touch this bone. So as it turns out, the infraspinatus and the teres minor are two muscles of the four in the rotator cuff that are external rotators. If I come into a posture like downward facing dog, those two muscles are working to externally rotate my shoulders. If I were to take those two muscles and externally rotate all the way, my palms would face up. However, in downward dog, my palms are pronated, but those two muscles are still at work to externally rotate my shoulders. If you're confused, this is internal rotation. You definitely are not doing that. In addition, if I come into a posture like eagle, believe it or not, those two muscles are at work as well, externally rotating my shoulders. Now, if you're looking at my shoulders and you're thinking, oh, those look internally rotated, think again, because if they were internally rotated, I would be more here. But I'm not, I'm more here. So those two muscles are at work there as well. Additionally, if I come down into a cow face pose or even just a seated hero pose, and I take Gambukasana or cow-faced arms, positioning-wise, this shoulder here is externally rotated, this shoulder here is internally rotated, so this shoulder here has those two muscles at work as well to externally rotate the shoulders. So in those three poses, those two muscles are at work concentrically contracting to create the joint action of external rotation of the shoulder. So I'm going to leave you here with that as your focus, if you so choose to take it. And I promise you, if you do take this approach, it will focus your learning in a way where you will reap the benefits of this approach you will reap the benefits as illustrated through your ability to cue with anatomy in mind faster and more accurately than if you were to just learn muscles by just randomly looking at them. Now, I will let you know that this approach to teaching muscles and poses, as I present it in my signature program, the Blueprint Learning Program, I don't actually teach this part until I teach the preliminary part of teaching the muscles. Then I proceed with the teachers in the program to teach them the muscles and the poses. And this is again an area where teachers get tripped up. They're out there on their own, they've done their 200-hour training, they know they need to learn anatomy, so they're just going off on their own and trying to buy books and go on YouTube and go to random workshops and figure it out. The problem with that approach, and the reason why it's going to take you much longer and probably not even give you the results you want, is because it's not predicated on teaching you anatomy according to a system. Sure, you can buy a book about muscles and poses and sit there and try to memorize it. However, if you're taught anatomy in a systematic way, one where, at least as it relates to this topic, you're learning the muscles in abstract first, you're prior to that learning how muscles work, you're prior to that learning anatomical actions. By the time you get to muscles and poses, all that other information is going to be ingrained in you, and that's going to make your study of this topic so much easier and meaningful. And that means that when you advance further to what you ultimately want to do, which is cue with anatomy in mind and build sequences with anatomy in mind, it's way easier. you've already done the homework. So I'm going to leave you with that to ponder upon. If you're interested in finding out more about the Blueprint Learning Program, I'll include the link here to my waitlist, which will allow you to get on the waitlist for the next time I open enrollment. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Namaste.